Anyone who had Cubo knew this theme song. This show was all about teaching us facts around the world and made it fun to watch Carmen Sandiego stealing artifacts, while these two kids would chase her around. Now Netflix decided to drop a remake of this show and spin the narrative of who Carmen is. From villain to good guy, it was astonishing how this could be a possible rewrite that can work, but they made Carmen a villain and a good guy depending on whose point of views we are looking at. When I first watched it, I was adamant that it was going to be crap since it was going to be a remake, and that's just boring to do. I was totally wrong, and it made my jaw drop. From the art style to a wide variety of characters and more backstories on how she became a thief, it was a masterpiece. The first episode of Carmen Sandiego has 4 seasons ending in January 2nd, 1999, giving us 40 episodes. In this episode, we watch Carmen in the dark coming to steal a painting, but instead of just taking the whole canvas, she takes the eyes of Van Gogh. She almost got caught but ran off, giving the police a tiny ounce of chance to only find out that they were on a wild goose chase. We get introduced to Player, Ivy, and Zach. They are part of the Acme group that catches thieves such as Carmen. Player is the brains of the team, always helping out locate Carmen, giving them more info, while Zach and Ivy are the ones doing the chasing in real life. To add to this right now, since they don't reveal this in episode 1, is that she comes from an organization called Vile, which are just like Carmen that steal valuable artifacts from all around the world. After these characters are introduced, Zach and Ivy are heading to Europe finding clues to get her. This is like a game of riddles that takes them into different places and ends up actually saving the masterpiece of the painting. And that's about how most episodes go. This show is focused more on the facts and history of learning things around the world, which was pretty fun to watch.
I stole some of the finest art in the world.
But I got it back.
Next time, you may not be so lucky.
Now that we got through the easier episode, we can use this to compare and contrast them. In the new show, they have around the same names but changed them quite a bit in personality wise. This show sadly ended on October 1st, 2020, and it won't be coming back. From the jump, we can see such a difference in art style. They give off a lot more sci-fi in the old Carmen Sandiego, giving us teleporting and technology that we've never seen. But in the new one, they are more close to our century time. I really love both of these art styles, but I know this was more of the TV from back then, as they wanted to give them an adult feel such as She-Ra, He-Man, Sherlock Holmes, and Archie show. We are first introduced to the young Carmen, but we find out this isn't her real name. They nickname her Black Sheep. No one knows what her name really is, as she was picked up as a baby by Vile. The organization in the show is run by 5 people: Coach Brunt, Countess Cleo, Dr. Bellum, Professor Maelstrom, and Shadow Sun. This is a big difference to the old show, as Carmen was a master thief, making her the top of the pyramid, making her have the control of Vile. With the time skip, she is around 11 years old living in the Vile Island. She becomes a really good thief, as that's all she is taught when she was young and knows the ins and out of this place. We are shown that she is very assertive of herself, since she knows that as an innocent kid she has the upper hand of protection. She pulls a prank on one of the adults in which she gets protected by her mother figure. But before this happens, young Carmen sees a piece of tech on the ground that the guy dropped, in which she decides to take to her room and see what it can do. There is another time skip, and now she is 16. This is when we are first introduced to Player as he hacks into Vile, and specifically this phone Carmen has, as she takes the phone call.
Hello?
Hello?
Who is this?
Black Sheep.
Come on. What's your real name?
Black Sheep.
The biggest difference in both stories about Player is that he is a sort of normal kid, just super smart, while in the old series he was part of the Acme group, which is an organization to stop thieves. I really like that we can see how his life is during some of these episodes and how normal this kid is, but is still able to help a ton just by his computer hacking skills. We see more of his identity in the new series, which I found cool as fuck. As a kid, I was always curious to know more about who Player is. I forgot to add, but Vile also doubles as a school to teach the young how to steal, which gives Carmen the right chance to be the greatest. When Carmen took this call, it gave her the push to want to see what the world has to offer, and decide to keep that phone on her to know someone from the outside world. Even though she is 16 now, there are 2 more years until the needed age to participate, but the fire and boredom in her makes her protest against waiting. Instead of them turning her down, they agree, except for Shadow Sun. Since 4 out of the 5 voted yes, it was settled. This is when Carmen meets the students she will be training with. One is not so kind, but everyone else was pretty chill. Carmen goes through with the training just like any other student, but plummets her test with Shadow Sun. He was the same dude who said she was too young to be a professional thief. This test was to pickpocket him and find the item before the time ran out. This sent her in a spiral as she was the best pickpocketer and there was no way he had the item anywhere on him. The first mission was for the students that passed came, and she decided to follow them to the place that they needed to steal from. When this happened, Carmen was in awe of how beautiful the outside can be. She stumbled upon the man who works there for this place, and they have a conversation on what is important to him.
This belongs in a museum.
Treasure? As in, worth a fortune?
Some things possess value other than monetary, young lady. Any historic find such as this gem belongs to everyone.
This starts to make her think of another perspective, but gets cut short as the other students come to steal. This puts her in the middle of both sides of the world, and it causes her to protect the man as they wanted to kill him to not leave any witnesses. This does not work out in her favor as Vile realizes she is gone. This is when we see the cleanup crew in action, and not gonna lie, they are one of my favorite characters because of how silent and scary they are. In further episodes, we see more of them and only hear them speak 2 or 3 times, but their actions speak for them. After this happens, Carmen is taken back to the island. The teachers take this time to discipline her more, and specifically Professor Maelstrom and Countess Cleo. After all that time of her waiting, she was getting ready for an escape plan and getting the phone back that Player hacked into. They made a plan that would get her off the island. Within all this mess, Shadowsun was the last to see her, running up to her and getting ready to take her down, but Carmen gets away safely. This is when we see the name for herself as she takes her own name from a brand tag that the hat used to have in her escape disguise.
Carmen Sandiego. Now, about this whole white hat thing. Does it have to be white?
This is the end of the story of how she got her name and where she is now. She is 20 years old now throughout the Netflix series. These 2 episodes are what really hooked me into this show, as I didn't expect it to go into depth of how Carmen became her. Even if it's not like the old show, in my opinion this one's better by the writing. But the old show was so much better, coming up with history and facts that can be learned without feeling like school. Now that we got acquainted with Acme and Vile, we can compare the characters' changes and roles and what they do now. I found out by the wiki fandom of Carmen Sandiego that Julia Argent is actually in the old show but not as shown. She is part of Carmen's crew of Vile, helping her out with stealing, but in the new Carmen she's recruited by Acme after a few episodes of getting close to catching Carmen. Before this, she was the partner of Devino, but he always minimized her gut feelings and brains to Carmen's next move.
Perhaps you should stop interrogating me and save the questioning for...
So when they recruited her in Acme, she was more on hands, but also had the biggest feeling that Carmen wasn't the only one stealing these, in which gets her closer to Carmen, in some instances solidifying her feeling that she isn't an evil person. This is one of the coolest comparisons as they both come into working for Carmen as if their paths were always tied together. Chase Devino is in one of the video games they had as one of the best agents of Acme, which is crazy because in the new show they show him as very dumb and can't think with his head and only his fists. Professor Gunner looks so different, as in the old show he had long blonde hair and tan skin, coming from being a marine biologist and an explorer that turned into a criminal who got caught by Acme and tried to take his vengeance on them in the old episodes. In the new series, he is very pale and white hair, almost dead looking, as his skin was more on the grayish side. He is one of the main people from Vile, in which he teaches psychology and manipulation. Zack and Ivy had the biggest switch as they work for Acme trying to take Carmen down, but in the new show had them working for Carmen, helping her out in all her missions. They are also not as heroic in the new show since they have tried stealing before and have more fun, in which in my opinion is a good comedic relief. Their sibling dynamic was good in both shows as they would argue and agree. It was realistic. They would also defend each other even if they were mad. Dr. Bellum is the same within both shows as they are a mad scientist with a love for tech and moderation. That's most of the characters I found out that are different in the series, but let me know down below if I missed someone. The thing I really liked about this show is that it has so much information about different stories and history facts without breaking your brain as a kid. It was fun to learn what they are learning along the way, but in the new version it mostly focused on the geography and the tiny aspects of what Vile is stealing. This slow-paced learning though might not get more facts in, but allowed the show to have a slower pace and focus on the character storylines too. The first show is more like riddles to figure out where Carmen is, but even though that was the whole point of the old show, the new one was more intriguing with its character developments and writing on how each person has a goal in mind. Instead of the show being black and white with good and evil, there is a mix of the real world that is giving such a realistic feeling and attaches us to most of these characters. But anyways, thank you for watching, and this will be my first video, so if you want to tell me what I did wrong or something more entertaining, please let me know. I'm always up for advice, and I've always just wanted to make a YouTube channel, so this is just like the right time to do so.